Welcome to Changing Voices in Higher Education, the podcast that explores the dynamic shifts shaping campuses and learners around the world. I'm your host, Shamima Raihan Manzoor, a higher education researcher and educator passionate about understanding how institutions adapt, innovate, and thrive in this rapidly evolving landscape. As higher education transforms, universities are reimagining themselves not just as centers of knowledge, but as engines of innovation and platforms for entrepreneurial thinking. This shift is reshaping how learners are prepared for a future that demands creativity, resilience, and bold experimentation. Over the last 2 decades, nearly all new job creation in the United States has come from young startup companies, and universities are stepping up to fuel that momentum. Based on the US Commerce Department report on innovative universities, in 2011 alone, 142 major research universities committed to strengthening innovation and entrepreneurship on their campuses and in their communities. Today, billions of federal research dollars are helping universities launch and expand entrepreneurship degrees, startup internships, business plan competitions, and even innovative focus dorms. Classrooms are turning into incubators, faculty are becoming founders, and campuses are evolving into engines of economic growth. In today's episode, Engineering Entrepreneurial Universities, we will dive deep into the trends and strategies reshaping higher education, from entrepreneurial governance and innovation labs to global competitiveness, interdisciplinary, and the evolving roles of faculty, leadership, and culture. This is an episode I'm particularly excited about as we explore how universities are transforming into entrepreneurial powerhouses and why this shift matters more than ever in a world racing to innovate. To explore this, I'm joined by a truly extraordinary leader whose experience spans 5 countries and more than 2 decades of impact across corporate, consulting, and academic worlds. Our guest today is Dr. Rania Nafea, an accomplished scholar, leader, and organizational consultant with over 20 years of experience across Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, the UAE, and Canada. Her journey began in corporate finance at HSBC Egypt, where she specialized in debt restructuring and financial turnaround strategies. She then moved into leadership roles with British American Tobacco North Africa before transitioning into organizational consulting, supporting major clients such as GHC, EISF with designing structures, performance systems, and talent frameworks. In academia, her impact has been equally transformative. She has taught and led at Seneca Polytechnic, Prince Mohammed University, and now Yamamah University, where she serves as an associate professor. Dr. Rania, it is an absolute pleasure to have you here today. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Shamima. The honor is mine. I'm very happy to be on board and I'm looking forward to this conversation.
To begin, how do you define an entrepreneurial university in today's higher education landscape?
Okay, so a lot of people talk about, entrepreneurial universities as this new thing coming up. And I would personally define an entrepreneurial university as one that treats teaching, research, and creating value for students and the stakeholders as a single integrated mission. So I'm not talking here about a university that, just commercializes its research. So we're not talking about publications. Entrepreneurial universities transcend that. We're talking about, encouraging opportunity recognition, experimenting, both faculty and students. We're talking about external engagement across the entire institution. So we're talking about students, faculty, administration, everyone together. Basically, I would say that it's a university that actively positions itself as a co-creator of innovation with the industry and the government, and not just, this classical approach of supplying graduates to the marketplace.
Yeah, and I love this word that you have used, the co-creation. It's really something that universities should look into. So you have had a remarkable global career across corporate finance, consulting, and academia. What inspired your passion for fostering innovation within universities, and how has your journey shaped that vision?
Not a lot of people ask me that question, but I started my career at HSBC Egypt, just like you said, and I was in the corporate finance department. So basically, we were responsible for doing the financial analysis and the packages for banks for the companies, to know if the bank could lend them and if they were solid entities that we could give money to. And then, you come across all of these ideas and you ask yourself, is this really a valid idea? Is this really creative enough? You know what? I've seen this idea a million times before. What makes this business unique? Why should we give money? But unfortunately, banks are just like a cog in the greater wheel of, I guess, society. And so they don't think in that creative way. So years later, when I transcended and I moved into academia, I still had that idea for new businesses and I still had that finance background. And so I became very passionate about entrepreneurship in universities in specific, when I specifically realized that I had so many brilliant students and there were so many ideas floating around. And these ideas were just dying at, what I'd like to call the PowerPoint stage. So basically, I found that a lot of students were giving PowerPoint presentations or coming into my office and saying, doctor, what if we did this, etc. But there was no real structure to sort of formalize these startups. And that's when I decided that there has to be some sort of funding or incentive or entity in universities that pushed entrepreneurship and changed the students' lives. And so basically, this is what I want to call institutional building. So how do we help our students become more than just students? How do we help them become business owners? How do they become responsible for their own destiny and move, from being just students to building prototypes?
Mm-hmm. And yeah, I do agree with you. Like, students present a lot of fantastic ideas, but they don't know whether there is any kind of implications afterwards or not. We can't promise them something. So that kind of, giving that kind of pain point, that how to help them out. And this is the fantastic way, as you said, to make their dreams come into reality.
There's no one to guide them, there's no one to tell them where to go, where to get the funding. Is this idea solid or not? Does it make sense or not?
Mm-hmm.
And so they need to be guided.
Exactly. So today, many institutions use the word entrepreneurial, but not all embody it. In your view, what truly separates an entrepreneurial university from one that's simply using the buzzword?
Yeah, that's a good question, Shamima, because I've seen a lot of universities across the path, and I'm not going to mention any names or any countries, but they just use that idea of we're an entrepreneurial university, and to them it's just a branding. But a true entrepreneurial university, you expect to see things like, the mission of the university really prioritizes innovation. You'd expect to see incubators and innovation centers. You'd expect to see some form of diversified funding base. So they have agreements with venture capital firms, or they have agreements with the owners of the university if it's a private university, or they apply to government funding, like Canada, for example. you'd expect to see interdisciplinary work between departments. If you have a university where each department is working as a silo, you know from the get-go that this is not an entrepreneurial university. You look for a university where there's work with stakeholders. So there's constant meetings with the government, with the PAC, which is like the industry personnel, basically to see if the programs are in sync with industry requirements. That is a true entrepreneurial university. Like it's not just a glossy innovation lab that has a slogan with a manager sitting down on a desk, etc. But there's actually no true framework to help students or engage with stakeholders and different departments.
I totally agree with you, because the implications should be not only into the written, documents or some words. It should be more than that. Yes, exactly. A government plays a critical role in institutional transformation. How can university governance adopt entrepreneurial principles without compromising academic integrity or mission?
That's a tricky question, because a lot of people think that when you talk about entrepreneurial universities, you want to transform the university into a startup, or you don't want to teach anymore. But that's not what academics or I am calling for. Basically, what we talk about when we talk about governance is that we want to have this idea of a disciplined experimentation. And this is a term I came up with recently in one of my papers, where I'm just saying that, okay, so we want to experiment with students. We want to know what's going to work and what's not going to work, but we need to have a disciplined framework that is in place by the university. And so, from my experience across like different regions, etc., I can see that when you have governance, so you have a solid framework from the university, when you have funding, when you have a university culture, and they're all aligned together, the universities can actually become genuine, inclusive providers of new businesses, new ideas, and not just, one size fits all providers of degrees, basically. And I think that Canada actually has one of the best governance models, where the universities have frameworks, they have senates, they have committees, they have a quality assurance framework that aligns everything together. And perhaps maybe we can talk about that later. But I think it's actually like Canada and the US, but since my experience is more on the Canadian side, I think a lot of universities like DMZ's, Toronto Metropolitan University's incubator, Seneca Polytechnic Helix, Velocity from Waterloo. Again, we're talking here about a polytechnic, a full-fledged, huge university like Waterloo, and Toronto Metropolitan TMU that was previous to Ryerson. They all have different frameworks for excellent governance when it comes to entrepreneurship. Everything is well structured, well guided. We know exactly where the funding is coming from, to which projects. We know exactly what kind of culture we want to build in our university. The mission is aligned. Faculty are on board. This is the excellent base, I would say, for an entrepreneurial university.
Mm-hmm. Yes, exactly. And I think it's more like an ecosystem. When all the pieces and elements work properly, then automatically the outcome and everything would be easier to achieve that entrepreneurial university goals. What kinds of academic structures or decision-making frameworks support experimentation, agility, and innovation within universities?
So I guess when we talk about an academic structure or a decision-making framework, we're talking about a university where we have a simplified process, basically. We don't want committees and, structures and layers of management, etc. That is the total opposite of what we want when we talk about entrepreneurship. We want to have, very agile or flexible committees, basically, or programs. We want to have innovation funding and seed grants, basically from the government and from, other interested institutions like TD, for example. TD Bank gave a $1 million grant to Helix in 2018 because they wanted to establish a micro-credential program to help new employees change their career and re-enter the market. So we want to have partnership projects. We want to have a strategic alignment. So everything needs to be on a higher level, basically, on a strategic macro level rather than on a micro level. Because when you have things on a macro level, it allows flexibility. And we can treat the new programs like initiatives. And we can help the universities, change and adapt. And that's on the higher level. On a more micro level, I guess, the academic structure we're looking for is to have cross-functional committees. You remember, you asked me previously, if, having different structures and we talked about committees across the different departments in academia. That's extremely important. So we have to have this cross-functional or multidisciplinary idea across faculty. So basically, faculty from engineering, working with faculty from business, working with the forgotten people from social sciences. Who says that, faculty and students from psychology can't be part of AI projects? Why not? Mm-hmm. I mean, anything that is AI-based probably has something got to do with psychology or sociology or business or something. We need to all work together, basically.
Yes, and I also agree with the one that you said, flexibility. They should have that flexible model, flexible mindset to make it happen. You have worked across Egypt, the Gulf, and Canada. How do cultural and policy environments in these regions influence our universities' ability to innovate?
It all boils down to structure and money. So basically, the more money a country has and the more committed a country is to entrepreneurship and innovation, the easier it is for universities to develop that idea. So we talked about Canada. We talked about Waterloo. We talked about, Waterloo, they raised $14 billion in venture capital in 2024. And they have about 527 companies in their pitch book. They're like the superstar of the Canadian economy, I guess. They're very much like the tech hub, if you want, in Canada. In Egypt, there's a very strong appetite for entrepreneurship because just like the Gulf, it aligns with the 2030 vision, which is a very big thing in the Middle East and MENA region. I guess one of the very strong entrepreneurial ventures in universities is the American University in Cairo Venture Lab. They're one of the strongest national platforms over there. They have incubated, again, more than 115 startups. EGP, 88 million in revenue, and they've created more than 500 plus jobs with more than, I think, 3 or 4 unicorns that are now trading on NASDAQ because of the foreign investment. In the Gulf, especially and specifically in Saudi Arabia, again, because there is this money, there's a lot of state-backed initiatives that link to Vision 2030. And I think one of the most prominent universities is King Abdulaziz University for Science and Technology, KAUST. And they have more than $2 million in deep tech and supporting student startup investments. So culture plays a big role when we talk about entrepreneurship, because you have the vision of the country, you have the people, and obviously in the Gulf and Canada, you have to remember in the Gulf and Egypt, this is house to most of the younger generation in the world. So obviously entrepreneurship is a big thing in these two areas, MENA region and the GCC. Canada, I think entrepreneurship is extremely important because of the way the universities are structured. Because of our higher education system, it's sort of blended into the DNA, if you want, of the universities.
Innovation labs and incubators are gaining momentum, but many remain symbolic rather than impactful. From your perspective, how can institutions design innovation hubs that genuinely support students and faculty entrepreneurship?
In a lot of parts of the world, unfortunately, innovation labs and incubators are just thought of as, a big, nice space with a 3D printer and slogans on the wall. I've seen that. But I think research on incubators actually shows that it's not just a co-working space, right? It's a place where we can select good ideas, we can coach our students, and we can help them implement, or basically go from ideation to implementation. And I did some research, and I found out that the World Bank and the UBI Global Data, which is this benchmark that ranks the university-based incubators, and they highlight that there are a lot of common features of a successful incubator. And they say that these are just small cohorts of 20 to 25 employees, and they usually have cycles or programs, and they are intensively housed with mentors. So faculty that want to give their time to students and to stakeholders outside the university to build this external network. That's the true incubator, in my opinion. And I think that if your lab can't identify or list successful startups that have come out of this incubator, and you can't think of any funding that you've raised or jobs that you've created, then your university incubator is probably just, symbolic. It's not an actual incubator.
So, do you think that when we talk about how to have that kind of, environment to nurture the entrepreneurial projects, mentoring is something that should be coming along the way? It's necessary to be there?
For sure. I think people think it's easy to be a mentor, but a mentor is not 100% an academic. Yes, you have to have knowledge of academia. I guess you need to understand entrepreneurship and understand the guidelines. And you need to know what is a minimum viable product, and you need to understand what's the balanced scorecard and all of that. But a mentor is also someone, and I think we need to actually provide a lot of training on that to faculty that want to be mentors. A mentor is someone that needs to give their time. A mentor is someone that needs to be willing to go above and beyond so that you can do the research with your students. Let's say a student comes to you and they tell you, I want to do an app where banks want to compete against each other to provide loans and make loans digital, like an all-inclusive app, let's say, with all Canadian banks. And so you would just enter the app, apply for a loan, and then the different banks would give you options. Let's say, right? you have to be someone that is interested in this topic. You have to be someone that's willing to give your time. So like, let's say research on the side. Does this app exist? Does it exist in different countries? What are the guidelines? What's required? Okay, then I've done that research. I've helped my students. I need to also be able to guide them. So, okay, guys, you need someone to help you, let's say, do the technical part. So like the app-based application. Connect with X or connect with Y. Then you need to probably go to the Canadian Central Bank maybe and see if this is something that they would authorize. So you need to connect them. So you need to constantly do your own research above and beyond to guide your students. And that's why mentoring is not something for the faint-hearted. No, it's not. I'm not taking something on a checklist. Hey, I'm a mentor. It's doing the actual work with your students as they go along step by step in their own journey.
Totally agreed. Partnership with industry are often essential for entrepreneurial ecosystems. What models of university-industry collaboration have you seen that create real impact for learners and local economies?
So when I thought about this question, I don't know why my heart again jumped to the Canadian experience. I am very much biased about the Canadian experience, and maybe this is why I keep telling my friends Canada is one of the best higher education models that you can send your kids to, because in Canada, we really have this university industry partnership. And I think that, we in Canada, we have been able to integrate the innovation as part of our DNA, if you want to think about it that way. And so, because we have two distinct models that I haven't seen in different places around the world. We have the co-op model of education, or what we call the, work integrated learning, WIL. And if you look at like European universities, or you look at even American universities, most of them don't have co-op. And so the Canadian co-op is really a very strong example of this structured program where students get to alternate study and paid work. Obviously within the guidelines of the Canadian government and within the guidelines of the Canadian higher education institutions. But this is a very good way to build this partnership between university and industry. So that's something that I haven't seen. Obviously, again, maybe because I have kids at Waterloo, I'm very biased towards Waterloo, but I've seen this in Western. I've seen co-op programs in, where else? McMaster. I've seen co-op programs in Queens. I mean, the Canadian system is filled with these examples. Even Canadian colleges, Seneca, Humber, they all have the co-op option programs. So when you build this industry partnership, you have this rapport with companies. And so if these companies require consulting in the future, or they want new ideas, they can always come to you because they know that your graduates come and work for them. So this is one way that we can build the industry-university partnership. The other way is obviously the incubators. But this is the incubators are a more lengthy way, if you want to think of it that way, because it's a strategic multi-layered approach. Like it's a stairway, you're thinking of ideation, and you're thinking of how to go to market, and you're thinking of how to grow the business, and you're thinking of how to scale up, and then you're thinking of how to partner with the government and the other industry and venture capitalists, etc. The simplest, easiest, most direct way is co-op and consulting projects. Like Seneca had that program when I was teaching there. there was this application basically that was built for different companies to post problems that they had. And then as faculty, we could basically go on that site or application and extract these problems and work on them as problem-based learning in our courses. And then our students would pitch those solutions to the companies back again. Great example of university industry partnerships, great example to market your students to make them more employable.
And when you're talking about this co-op, yeah, I do agree that is an excellent opportunity to reduce the gap between employer and the graduates, because sometimes when people finish their study, they really don't know that where to apply, what to do. But now they are getting more aware during the co-op journey.
I mean, we even tell our kids that even when you apply for a co-op and you apply for 100 jobs and you only get accepted in 2, right? That is in itself experience on looking for a job, that you are getting hands-on during your younger years rather than waiting when you graduate, right, to get that. Because like me and you, for example, we've done that after graduation. Like we started searching for jobs and getting rejected, etc., etc. Now students don't have to wait that far. Mm-hmm. They can get that experience when they're 18, 19, 20. If there's a co-op program, they can get that experience. And so that really sets their expectations. And so you're producing students that are, I guess, well-rounded, more employable. They know what the workplace is. They know it's a difficult place. They know it's cutthroat. And that's what you want your students to look like.
Entrepreneurial thinking can't be limited to business schools. How can institutions embed entrepreneurial education across disciplines such as arts, science, and humanities?
Yeah, I mean, I think we touched upon that before. We need to stop that idea that a department needs to work on its own. Everything can't be housed in the School of Business, right? Mm-hmm. Nowadays, actually, the focus is shifting from the schools of business to the schools of engineering and STEM, because these are where, the mega projects and the tech projects and the AI and everything is happening. But we have to think of project-based learning. So again, a project where all the schools or students from different courses, whether they're in STEM, social sciences, anthropology, I don't know whatever discipline they're in, can all work on together. So we need to think about project-based learning. We need to think about, I would say, being part of more hackathons and worldwide challenges. We need to think of being more entrepreneurial, and so we need to shift the focus from starting a company to developing opportunities and creating this idea of that our students are creative, our students are resilient, our students want to innovate. So, I think we should stop trying to turn every student into a startup founder, and we don't want every graduate to be career ready only. We want them to be able to create value. And so they need to do that by working with other students from other disciplines, because this is real life. Real life is all about working with other students and working with people from other departments. This is the truth of entrepreneurial education.
So true. Innovation requires risk-taking and tolerance for failure, two things academia traditionally struggles with. How can university leaders shift that mindset?
Yeah, I wish entrepreneurship were as neat and tidy as academia, basically, where, everything is exams, grades, perfect, peer-reviewed, etc. But I think as academics progress and as the time, continues on, we need to stress the importance of normalizing failure. We need to accept that we as faculty can fail. We can fail our students. So, I don't know everything about every single idea that my students are pitching. There are some things that are, not in my discipline, that are above my scope, or some things that go over my head. So it's okay to not know. It's okay to fail. We need to understand that learning is a process. We need to have evaluation cycles. So when we talk about entrepreneurship, we need to have milestones to evaluate our students. So again, it's not about if they actually produce a company in the end and if this company succeeds or not. It's about going through the process from ideation to doing the company. So it's about the process of experimenting, being creative, working together, collaborating. So we need to, I think, make our students feel that they need to be proactive. They need to take risks. And with them as faculty and academics, we also need to be proactive and take risks with our students.
And you have mentioned about that process. That is an experience itself, actually, for the entrepreneur, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And for us, because, mm-hmm. They tell you things and you're like, wow, where did that idea come from? Or why didn't I think of that before? Like I had students think of a platform like in the Gulf, where they can sell handmade products from women that are stay-at-home moms, especially in the GCC and in MENA. You have a lot of, non-working women that have, they do crochet and, embroidery and stuff like that. And that's very, common in our culture. And when they came up with the idea, I was like, wow, that's a really good idea. Like, why didn't I think of that before? And students will really surprise you. And you have to commend them for taking you by surprise and going through that process, rather than telling them, oh, but in the end, you didn't raise the money, I'm sorry. It's not about raising the money. It's about thinking creatively, thinking out of the box.
Exactly. Culture is the heartbeat of any institution. What role does institutional culture play in sustaining innovation, and how can leaders build cultures that reward creativity and collaboration?
Unfortunately, it would be great to say that all leaders appreciate entrepreneurship, but they don't. Because leaders are at the end people that are very high up at, the top of the business. So some leaders have this institutional culture where innovation and entrepreneurship is ingrained inside the university. And some leaders are stuck at this, branding stage. Yeah, we have an incubator, this is a money maker for us to bring in more students, etc. So what really matters is whether this leader or this institution shares knowledge, whether this institution promotes, again, the idea of interdisciplinary work, people and faculty not working in silos. What really matters is, again, first and foremost, engaging stakeholders. If you don't know what the market wants, you will never be an entrepreneurial university. If you keep graduating, accountants to the world, while the world needs more biologists and more biochemists, then obviously you're not an entrepreneurial university. You're not in sync with what's happening in your country. So you have to really have an entrepreneurial culture. The campus, the labs, the faculty, everything needs to promote that sense of, we want something new. We want creativity. We want to work together. We want to be in sync with the industry. We want to be in sync with our stakeholders. We want meetings with the government. We want the government to be involved in our programs and tell us, are we doing the right thing? Is this what they want? Who exactly do they want to see in the market? What are their skills? Yeah, culture is everything. There's no way to downplay it.
Academic freedom and faculty empowerment are central to university life. How do you see these aligning with entrepreneurial governance models?
Colleges did go on strike multiple times during the past few years or past decades. So I think faculty and academic freedom is a precondition for entrepreneurial behavior. You cannot tell a faculty what to focus on in terms of their own course or their own program, and you can't tell them what to teach, what to focus on. You can't tell them which projects to take, which projects not to take. You can't tell them who to supervise, who to not supervise. You have to have that flexibility, I guess, within the university system, where faculty can take sabbaticals to work on extracurricular projects, where faculty can go into the lab, I don't know how many hours per week, to work on projects with students, where faculty can decide to author articles and, again, bring in their students to author articles with them, because there are some students that we have to, admit they're not meant for the entrepreneurial life. There are some students that you will find are purely academic students. And again, it's our job to understand that those are the academic students, and you know what? We can include them in our publications, to do research for us, etc. Not everyone is meant to be an entrepreneur. Some students want to be in the lab. Some students want to publish with you. You need to have that flexibility and complete freedom to understand what works for who, and to be pretty autonomous, let's say, in the educational system. Because if you don't have that autonomy and flexibility, again, you are weakening the chances of your students and your entrepreneurial role as an educator. Because again, you need to guide different students, whatever it is that they want.
Looking ahead, what will define the next generation of entrepreneurial education ecosystems?
I'll start by saying the buzzword AI, because a lot of people, there's this constant conversation nowadays that we can't use AI, or AI in education, or AI is going to replace us as educators. Nothing of that is going to happen. We need to teach our students, our learners, our startups, everything we know about data, and give them AI tools. Okay, so that's what we need to teach them. That's the first thing that the next generation needs to, understand. So whatever AI tools we can give them, teach them how to use AI prompts properly, teach them how to filter the information that comes from AI. So that's the first thing, because everyone's talking about it. The second thing I would say is ecosystem thinking. So again, we need to, and you mentioned that earlier, we need to teach our students that they are not standalone players. Their strength is in working with other students or other universities or industry partners or other stakeholders, whoever they may be. We also need to teach the next generation the fact that there's this idea of blended physical and virtual hubs because this is a generation that saw COVID-19. This is a generation where, they were hit pretty hard by being virtual. And so we need to tell them that this blend of physical and virtual is something that is going to be, or is actually, the new norm nowadays. I would say that, again, because we live in Canada, we need to educate the next generation that culture makes a difference. And that, again, different businesses might be targeted for different people. Working with different cultures, you have to understand those cultures. We don't all think the same way. We don't have the same morals. We don't have the same beliefs. And so, again, this is something that the next generation of entrepreneurs need to understand. Culture, and I think, you touched upon that in one of your previous questions, it's a very important motivator for entrepreneurship. Whatever your culture is, wherever you are on the planet, you need to tailor your entrepreneurial thinking or venture to the culture that you are talking to. So in Canada, you might need something, but in the United States, you want something else. In Afghanistan, you want something different, etc., etc.
As institutions expand globally, how can they balance global competitiveness with local relevance and context?
I think the most successful entrepreneurial universities are the ones that are globally connected but locally committed, which again ties into that idea that we just said about culture. So you need to design programs that cater to the local needs. Now, whether that's, depending on the country, like for some countries, they are focusing on, tech apps. For example, Canada, that's our thing. Or climate change. Maybe in Europe, they are focusing on medicine because, they have a shortage in doctors and nurses or whatever. So you need, as a university, to balance your competitiveness with local commitment by, I guess, aligning your vision as a university with the vision of the country that you're in, with their research priorities. So every country has a research priority, or it has a vision 2030, 2035, whatever it may be. Try as much as possible to align yourself as a university with the vision of your country or your region. Because giving back to the economy is the best kind of entrepreneurship, and it will be supported by the government. And you want the government support because the government is the biggest investor, venture capitalist, that will support your students' projects.
Mm-hmm. And do you think, is it part of also due to the demographics that they are serving that should complement the ideas, the projects they're taking up for that region, for that particular region?
I definitely agree. So if you look at the demographics of Europe, they're an aging economy, which is probably why they are investing more and thinking more of startups in the medical field. But in the MENA region or Asia, this is a younger economy, which is why most of their investment is geared towards agriculture. And again, this is where most of the world agriculture is. It's geared towards shopping, because again, like Asia, GCC, MENA region, the youngest population is there. And obviously everyone's crazy about shopping and online shopping, which is why you have, AliExpress and Shein and, all of these applications, because this is where the demographic is. It's not in Europe, for example, because they're old. Mm-hmm. So yeah, you're definitely correct, 100%.
Finally, what advice would you give to higher education leaders who want to begin transforming their institutions into living startups?
To wrap it up, I would say that universities need to have three main points. They need to have a clear institutional mission and vision. Mission and vision need to include entrepreneurship, and it needs to identify what type of entrepreneurship am I interested in, if there's a specific type, and who are my clients, so which stakeholders, and what types of services am I going to provide as an entrepreneurial university. So am I going to have an incubator open to everyone, people from inside university and walking clientele from the economy, or am I interested in having a specific program that is 1 year, 2 years, or like DMZ, for example, Toronto Metropolitan University, it's an 18-month program. So you need to clarify that within your mission and vision at the higher level. The second thing is you need to pick a few leverage points, or think of it as a business. You need to think of unique selling propositions for your incubator. So am I going to have one incubator or multiple incubators based on discipline? Am I going to partner with the industry or the government or everyone? How am I going to measure the outcomes of that incubator? Is it by funding? How much funding do they get? Success of the ventures? If people come into the program and they graduate from the program. So again, just like any startup or business, you have to have KPIs for your incubator. Don't let it float, like, yay, we have an incubator, students are coming in, they're taking our program. Okay, but how do you measure the success of that incubator? And then finally, you need to align the faculty or the academics with your incubator. So everyone needs to be on the same page. You need to know who's going to work in that incubator. Are these mentors going to be paid, or is it extra volunteer work? Do these mentors have experience with entrepreneurship, or do you want to teach them first and then make them mentors? Is there something for them? And again, promotion, rewards, whatever. You need to clarify all of these before you can turn your university into, what you kindly called a living startup. So you need to treat your university, I guess, less like a finished product and more like a portfolio of, evolving experiences and experiments. And you need to work with your academics and your industry and your government, etc., to constantly redesign the process. So if this is not working, let's be flexible. Let's replace it with something else. This vision is not working for us, or this discipline, we don't have a lot of students in it. Let's, rethink our strategy and move into something else. I think that's really the best way to have this living startup. Living is all about being flexible, learning from your mistakes. Do not go into one model and continue in a model that is not working for you. That's my take.
Dr. Rania, thank you so much for your thoughtful insights and the depth of experience you have shared with us today. Your work across industries, regions, and educational systems offers a powerful lens into what it truly means for universities to be entrepreneurial, adaptive, and mission-driven.
Thank you so much, Shamima. The pleasure was mine. I'm really happy that I shared all of this with you. And I am looking forward to more collaboration between us. There's a lot of scope in entrepreneurship, and that's the real opportunity going forward in the next 10 years.
And to our listeners, thank you for joining us on Changing Voices in Higher Education. There are many more conversations ahead as we continue to explore the innovations global perspectives, and shifting dynamics shaping the future of learning. Until next time, I'm Shamima. Stay curious, stay inspired, and keep learning because the future of education is now.